She just snapped on live TV, and what Caitlin Clark did tonight might change the entire future of the Indiana Fever forever. Stick around because by the end of this video you're going to understand exactly why one of the greatest talents in basketball history is being wasted right in front of our eyes, and what has to happen next before it's too late. Caitlin Clark's frustration was written all over her face tonight. You could see it in every possession, the drama, the tension, everything boiling under the surface. And honestly, the officiating tonight was part of the problem. I've said this before on this channel, you're not going to get every call. At this point in her career, she knows they're not going to protect her the way they protect other stars. So you play through it. You act like it's not happening. You keep grinding. But tonight, Caitlin Clark couldn't hold it together anymore. 4 of 14 from the field. 1 of 8 from three-point range. Just 13 points. Those aren't just bad numbers for Caitlin Clark. Those are shocking numbers. And what we watched wasn't simply a player having an off night. That was a full emotional breakdown live on national television. The frustration, the body language, the visible anger directed at the officials. This is a young woman who has reached a genuine breaking point. And the real question we need to be asking tonight is simple. How did we get here? Let's rewind all the way back to the beginning of this season. Back in the off-season, when free agency opened up, the Indiana Fever made a choice, and that choice was to do almost nothing. They didn't make the major moves everybody expected. Then came the draft, and across the entire basketball creator community, the reaction was unanimous. This roster does not have championship pieces. The size isn't there. The length isn't there. The defensive versatility isn't there. And most importantly, the system isn't built around their generational talent. Fast forward to tonight, and the Fever sit at 14-10. On paper that sounds respectable. But look a little closer because a win over the Las Vegas Aces in a single regular season game, a game where Becky Hammon was literally laughing on the sideline afterward, does not make you a contender. It makes you a team that just picked up a participation trophy. And tonight, everything boiled over. 4 of 14 shooting. 1 of 8 from deep. 13 points, 6 assists, 3 rebounds for Clark. Meanwhile, Aliyah Boston dropped 15 on 6 of 11 shooting. Kelsey Mitchell went 7 of 16 for 20 points. Sophie Cunningham chipped in 10 points, hitting 2 of 4 from 3. It was an ugly game from start to finish, and the Golden State Valkyries controlled this thing basically from tip-off. They dominated every single quarter, no real contest. Now here's the moment where everything actually broke. Caitlin Clark drives to the basket, takes contact, and no call. She's furious. She's screaming at the officials. And according to several lip readers who broke down the footage frame by frame, what she was saying was unmistakable. She felt she had been fouled 5 separate times on that single sequence with 0 whistles blown. 5 times. 0 calls. Like I've said on this channel before, you are not going to get the benefit of the doubt out there. The officiating crews have made it painfully clear they are not protecting her the way they protect other established stars in this league. So you're supposed to play through it? Act like it doesn't bother you. Stay locked into the game. But tonight, Caitlin Clark simply could not do that anymore. And that tells us something real about where her mental and emotional state currently sits. And look, even the broadcast crew noticed it. Commentators were pointing out live that Caitlin Clark has arguably the worst whistle of any star in this entire league, and yet the league allowed her that raw, unfiltered emotional reaction because frankly it was earned. But let's talk about something even more damning than the missed calls. Watch that behind-the-back no-look pass she threw. That's not just a good pass. That's Larry Bird-level court vision. That's Magic Johnson-level creativity. That is the kind of basketball artistry that sells out arenas, drives national ratings, and builds dynasties that last for a decade. And the Indiana Fever are wasting it, because in Stephanie White's offensive system, Caitlin Clark has been reduced to the 3rd scoring option on her own team. Let that sink in for a second. The most popular athlete in women's sports. The player who single-handedly drove WNBA viewership numbers to all-time record highs. The generational talent who broke nearly every college basketball scoring record in history. She is being used as the 3rd option, behind Aliyah Boston and behind Kelsey Mitchell. That is not a coaching decision. That is organizational malpractice. And you saw flashes of it all night, gorgeous behind-the-back passes, ones that would make Hall of Famers jealous, wasted because her teammates couldn't finish. It's beautiful basketball being played inside a broken structure. She finally got a jumper to fall late, and even that felt like a small mercy in an otherwise brutal night. Meanwhile, credit where it's due, Sophie Cunningham has quietly become one of the most efficient three-point shooters in the entire league over the past month. She deserves real Sixth Woman of the Year consideration. But here's what her big night against Indiana actually represents. The Phoenix Mercury and teams like the Valkyries know exactly how to deploy their weapons. They understand modern basketball spacing and player usage. Meanwhile, the Fever are running an offensive system that treats a generational superstar like a complementary role player. And this isn't just about one bad loss tonight. This has been building for months. Every hard, uncalled foul. Every bit of drama with opposing players around the league. The Chennedy Carter cheap shot. The Angel Reese clothesline. Marina Mabrey's comments. Dejounte Carrington's flagrant foul. And then Chelsea Gray publicly claiming that Caitlin Clark's fanbase was hurling racial slurs at her, with zero verified connection between the person involved and Clark or her actual fans. And still, Caitlin had to carry that weight publicly without complaint. Think about the sheer pressure this young woman has been under since day one. She entered this league facing unprecedented hype and expectation. And she delivered on every single promise. She filled arenas across the country. She sent television ratings through the roof. She single-handedly brought millions of brand new fans into women's basketball. And in return? Physical abuse on the court with almost no protection from officiating crews. Passive-aggressive shots from rival players suggesting she somehow doesn't deserve her success. Media narratives questioning whether she's even good for the growth of the game because she's too popular. And a coaching staff that, for whatever reason, refuses to build a system around her obvious talents. At some point something has to give. Tonight it gave. That technical foul wasn't about one missed call in isolation. It was the release valve for 6 months of accumulated frustration finally exploding in real time. So where does this go from here? Honestly, I don't see this current relationship between Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever organization surviving long-term in its current form. There are really only two paths forward. Either the Fever clean house entirely, Stephanie White, Lynn Dunn, Kelly Krauskopf, the whole decision-making chain, and bring in a staff that will actually build a system around their franchise player. Or, eventually, Caitlin Clark gets traded. Those are the only two realistic outcomes, because what we're watching right now is simply not sustainable long-term. She is too talented, too valuable, and too important to the future growth of this entire league to keep being misused like this. And here's the part the Fever front office does not seem to fully grasp. Caitlin Clark holds the leverage in this relationship, not them. She's the most popular player in the sport. She's the reason their attendance numbers have tripled. She's the reason their local television ratings are up by roughly 400%. She has the power here. She always has. Through all of this, by the way, Caitlin Clark has remained completely professional. She hasn't thrown her teammates under the bus publicly. She hasn't called out her coaching staff by name. She's been all class, every single step of the way. But at some point, being classy doesn't protect you from organizational dysfunction. Somebody needs to step in and advocate loudly on her behalf. And if the people around her won't do it, then eventually she may have to walk into that front office herself and start demanding real change. She has more than enough leverage to do exactly that. The only real question is whether she's willing to use it. And here's what makes this whole situation so frustrating from a pure business perspective. If you own this franchise, you would build literally everything around Caitlin Clark. Every roster decision. Every coaching philosophy. Every offensive set. Not out of sentiment, but because she is the revenue engine. She's the reason sponsors are calling. She's the reason every arena sells out on the road. In any serious business, you protect and maximize your most valuable asset. You do not relegate it to third option status and just hope things sort themselves out. The Fever are printing money right now because of Caitlin Clark. Their franchise valuation has skyrocketed. Merchandise sales are through the roof. Ticket prices have tripled, and they're still selling out night after night. And what are they doing with all of that windfall? Running a system that doesn't fit her game. Surrounding her with a roster that lacks the size and athleticism to compete with the league's elite. Employing a coaching staff that sometimes seems more concerned with proving the team isn't just one player than with actually building a championship contender. Look at tonight's result against the Valkyries. It wasn't close. It wasn't competitive. Indiana got dominated on their own home floor, and the most telling image of the entire night wasn't even the final score. It was Becky Hammon casually laughing on the court in an earlier meeting, fully aware her team has been to this rodeo before and knows exactly what a real championship roster looks like. Meanwhile, Indiana is out here celebrating regular season wins over teams that clearly aren't taking them seriously yet. 14-10 sounds fine on paper, until you realize this roster isn't built for playoff basketball. They lack the defensive versatility to slow down elite offenses. They lack the size to compete in the paint against teams like New York or Las Vegas. They lack the depth to survive a grueling playoff series. And most critically of all, they still don't have an offensive system designed to unleash their best player. When Caitlin Clark takes 14 shots and makes only 4, that is not simply a bad shooting night. That is a system failure. She should realistically be taking 25 shots a game minimum. She should be running pick-and-roll actions built specifically around her gifts. She should have shooters spacing the floor properly around her at all times. Instead, she's being asked to squeeze into a system that was designed before she ever arrived in the league. Think about every truly great team in basketball history. The Bulls were built around Michael Jordan. The Lakers were built around Magic, then Kobe, then LeBron. The Warriors were built around Steph Curry. The Celtics were built around Larry Bird. When you're fortunate enough to have a generational talent on your roster, you don't ask them to adapt to your system. You completely rebuild your system around maximizing their gifts. That's not complicated. That is basketball 101. Somehow the Indiana Fever still haven't figured that out. And here's exactly what happens if nothing changes. Caitlin Clark finishes this season exhausted and frustrated. They'll likely make the playoffs because the expanded format lets more teams in these days. They'll probably survive a first-round series against a weaker opponent. And then they'll run straight into Las Vegas or New York or Connecticut and get thoroughly exposed. The talent gap and the system gap will be painfully obvious on a national stage. And in the off-season, Caitlin Clark is going to have a real decision to make. Does she run it back for another year, hoping something finally changes internally? Or does she quietly start exploring her options? The WNBA doesn't offer unrestricted free agency the way the NBA does. Players don't have identical leverage to simply force a trade on paper. But when you're Caitlin Clark, when you're the single biggest reason league-wide viewership is up across the board, you carry leverage that goes well beyond what's written in the collective bargaining agreement. If she truly wants out eventually, she will find a way out. The real question is whether the Indiana Fever front office is smart enough to fix all of this before it ever reaches that point. So what actually needs to happen, starting immediately? First, the entire offense needs to be redesigned around Caitlin's strengths. That means far more pick-and-roll usage, more off-ball screening actions to get her open catch-and-shoot looks, and more transition opportunities where she's allowed to push the pace instead of standing around watching others operate in isolation. Second, the roster desperately needs an upgrade. They need a defensive-minded forward capable of guarding multiple positions. They need a legitimate rim protector to anchor the interior defense. And they need reliable shooters who can properly space the floor and punish defenses for ever helping off of them. Third, and this is the big one, the coaching staff needs to fully commit to building a genuine championship-caliber system around their franchise player. And if they can't or won't do that, whether out of stubbornness, pride, or simple resistance to change, then it may be time for them to step aside for someone who will. The championship window with Caitlin Clark is wide open right now. She's young. She's healthy. She is visibly improving with every single game she plays. But windows like this don't stay open forever. The league itself keeps getting deeper and more competitive. Expansion is coming. Rival teams are actively building super teams around their own stars. And if the Indiana Fever waste this generational opportunity purely because they were too stubborn to adapt, it will go down as one of the single biggest organizational failures in the history of the WNBA. And eventually, Caitlin Clark will end up somewhere that truly appreciates what they have. Somewhere that builds around her properly, protects her, empowers her, and finally gives her the real tools to compete for championships. Tonight's game was genuinely painful to watch. Not just because Indiana lost. Not just because Caitlin shot poorly by her own standards. It was painful because it felt like watching a true superstar slowly realize in real time that she may be in the wrong situation entirely. That body language. That visible frustration. That technical foul. Those weren't the signs of a player who's simply struggling on a given night. Those were the signs of a player who knows deep down that she's better than this, who knows her team should be far better than this, and who is quietly running out of patience waiting for the people in charge to finally figure it out. So the real question now is, what happens next? Does this organization actually wake up and make the changes that are so obviously needed? Or do we sit here and watch this entire situation slowly deteriorate until it hits a breaking point that genuinely can't be repaired? Because make no mistake, right now we are heading directly in that direction. And when Caitlin Clark eventually decides she's truly had enough, The Indiana Fever front office is going to look back at nights exactly like tonight and realize they had every single warning sign laid out right in front of them. They simply chose to ignore it. Look, if this breakdown genuinely opened your eyes tonight, if you felt even a little bit of what Caitlin Clark is going through out there, please don't just scroll past this. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel exists to say the things other people are too scared to say, to defend the players who deserve better, and to hold organizations accountable when they fail generational talent like this. Every single subscription genuinely helps this channel keep growing, so we can keep bringing this kind of honest, unfiltered analysis to more fans who love this game as much as you do. Costs you nothing, it takes 2 seconds, and it means everything to this community. So please, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let's keep fighting for the players who deserve it. So here's my real question for all of you tonight. If you were in Caitlin Clark's shoes right now, how much longer would you be willing to wait? Would you give this organization one more full season to finally get it right? Would you be demanding a trade immediately? Or would you do exactly what she's doing right now? Keep your head down, stay professional, and hope the people in charge eventually figure it out on their own? Drop your honest thoughts down in the comments below. And if you think I'm being too hard on the Indiana Fever organization tonight, tell me why. I genuinely want to hear it. Because from where I'm sitting, they are wasting a generational talent right in front of our eyes, and that, to me, is simply unforgivable.